So there are quite a number of fundamental events expected today, and the first one will start by 11:55 a.m. Good morning, Madam Onaji. 11:55 a.m. this morning will have the first fundamental release. Good morning, Kinasi peeps. And it's going to be a speech from the European Central Bank President Lagarde. He's going to give a speech by 11:55 a.m. Please, our advice, we are cautious with our trades. If you have running trades, make sure they are protected. Speeches can go, in any direction. So make sure your trade is protected if you have a running trade. Best is actually that you're not in the market when these kind of speeches are made. But peradventure you're already in the market, you don't want to exit, then make sure you put a proper stop loss on your trade. Now, 2:30 p.m., there'll be employment cost index from United States, which will impact upon the dollar. Then 3:45 p.m., we have Bank of Canada rate statement, overnight rate, and by 4:30 p.m., there'll be Bank of Canada press conference. Now, I'm going to give you my projection for two card pairs for this particular news event. That's the one from 3:45 to 4:30 p.m. And later tonight by 8 p.m., there'll be federal funds rate, FOMC projections, economic projections, FOMC statement. So today's FOMC, which is one of the biggest news events in the forex market. Okay, Mr. Basid, kindly chat with me on this privately. We don't post, phone numbers and the group here. I mean, on this live call. So I'm deleting it. Just send that information to me privately. I appreciate that. Thank you. So just chat with me with the WhatsApp number with which I send the link. All right, thanks. Thanks for understanding, sir. All right, so tonight we're having FOMC by 8 p.m. We don't trade it live, but if you want to trade, you're free to do that. So, but then for today, the key instrument for today, for fundamental, is actually the one from Canada. That's the BOC rate statement, overnight rate, and the BOC press conference. And I'll give you two Canadian dollar pairs that I'll be looking at for this particular event. So I'm switching over now to the chart to check out the technicals. For the dollar, I am bearish based on what I'm seeing on the USD CHF. I remember telling us yesterday that I was seeing a symmetrical triangle on the 4-hour time frame. It's still, the symmetrical triangle is getting clearer. As of yesterday, we just had just this rejection candle alone. Now we're having two rejection candles side by side, along the trend line. So there's a very high tendency. We may be expecting possibly a bearish movement on the dollar. Though in real sense, a symmetrical triangle price could break out on either side, but we seem to be having more of a bearish potential at the moment. So, and if the news from the United States in the afternoon comes out bad for the dollar, that will help to trigger the bearish movement on the USD CHF. I'm back to Forex Factory. This is Forex Factory page, and by 2:30 p.m. we're expecting employment cost index, and later tonight we're expecting a federal fundraise FOMC. So on both events, I hold a bearish outlook on the dollar. But for the first one, if the data comes out bad, that's the employment cost index. If it comes out bad with a red color, you may look at selling the USD CHF. So please take note of that. 2:30 p.m. we are bearish on the United States dollar. Now for the card pairs, I gave an analysis yesterday where I said I was bearish on the card CHF. I still maintain that, outlook. I remember vividly telling us that I was seeing the formation of a head and shoulder pattern on the card CHF. Just a second, I need to remove all these lines. All right. For the benefit of those who missed the analysis yesterday, this is my outlook. On the daily time frame, I could clearly see a downward trend line on the CAD CHF price descending in the bearish direction. This is a lower high, and price toward the trend line the third time with the third lower high. So technically, overall direction is bearish, and from this region, we expect further bearish movement. And also, a further confluence is a resistance, which is touching the candle for 2 days ago, which is actually a rejection. Okay, that was the candle of yesterday, which was a rejection candle. So technically, we have an overall bearish outlook on the CAD CHF from the daily time frame. And if we flip down to the 1 hour time frame, I remember vividly telling us that I was seeing the formation of a shoulder, a head, a second shoulder, and price is already trying to find its way downwards. So if the data from Canada, the Bank of Canada restatement, if it comes out bad for the Canadian dollar, that will trigger the bearish movement down on the CAD CHF. So I still maintain that bearish outlook on the CAD CHF. So let's watch out for the news in the afternoon. Once it's actual less than forecast, or better still bad for the Canadian dollar, you're free to take a sell on the CAD CHF. And also, I'll be looking at the CAD JPY. Though my number one setup is the CAD CHF, but the CAD JPY took a walk. Now, this is my outlook on the CAD JPY. On the daily time frame, we have price coming in from a previous support on the daily. That support is from around May this year. It's a level that's been holding since May this year. So we have a support turned resistance right here. A support on resistance on the daily time frame with a confluence of a rising wedge, the tip of the rising wedge meeting that support on resistance. This is higher high, higher high, and higher high. So technically, from the support on resistance and the higher high, which is like a resistance, we're expecting a move to the downside. I can't see any clear formation of 1 hour at the moment, but what I know is that I can still draw a trend line here. So technically, price has broken out below the lower trend line, but RSI is still clearly above 50. So if price is able to break out below this recent low, we're going to see a massive fall on the CAD JPY. So the same thing, if the news comes out bad for the Canadian dollar, that will trigger that downward movement on the CAD JPY. So we're bearish on both the CAD CHF and the CAD JPY ahead of the news in the afternoon. On I'm also looking at the GBP AUD. Now for the GBP AUD, GBP AUD is trading around a resistance turn support on the daily time frame. Price hit a resistance here, broke out, and became a support, 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 and price is back to that support zone. So technically, we're expecting a move to the upside. And on the bigger picture, that may also be giving us something that looks a lot like a double bottom pattern, being anticipated. But then for now, our focus is actually what is happening now. Technically, we have a bullish projection on the GBP AUD. And if we take it down to 1 hour, currently I'm seeing the formation of an inverse head and shoulder, shoulder, head, second shoulder, and I'll be expecting a move to the upside. So watch this instrument closely today. If price is able to break out above this current high, now let me remove this one. Okay. If price is able to break out above that current high, then we'll see that price will trigger to the next resistance level. Now you may take just a trade, but if you want to take 2 trades, it's not bad. That could be a profit taking level and a second profit taking level. Not too far from each other though. So price could go ahead and hit these two levels. And on the average, that would generate between 42 pips and about 60 pips. So let's just say between 40 and 60 pips movement is anticipated on the GBP AUD. So we're bullish on the GBP AUD on 1 hour time frame. All right. And finally, I'm seeing some uh setup around the CHF pairs. I've mentioned USD CHF bearish, CAD CHF bearish, but then I'm also seeing uh NZD CHF bearish and also AUD CHF bearish. Now that is telling you that something is actually happening to the CHF generally. That means the CHF is very, very strong. If you're seeing setup across board like four instruments at the same time, that is telling us of a very strong outlook on the CHF. But then let's just quickly look at this CHF pairs. The AUD CHF is on 1 hour. Now, don't forget that we're bullish on the GBP AUD on 1 hour. So we can't be bullish on this AUD CHF. It has to be the bearish direction since the AUD is the base currency in this case. All right, so this is the AUD CHF. On the daily time frame, price hit a resistance level and closed on that resistance level yesterday. This is a resistance. We have like a rejection candle. Technically, we're looking for a downward movement. And on 1 hour, we can still see that very sharp rejection candle there, which is indicative of a potential reversal. All right, so we're going to be looking out for a breakout to the downside in the course of today. So watch it closely. RSI is currently below 50 at the entry. We expect RSI to have reversed below zero. Same thing, MACD to also reverse below zero. So we're bearish on the AUD CHF on 1 hour. And for the benefit of those who are swing traders, I have NZD CHF for you. And this actually is a high probability setup. So you watch it very, very closely. Now for the NZD CHF, on the daily time frame, price is trending downwards, lower high. Um, okay, I think I should start it from the weekly. All right, I think it's better off. On the weekly time frame, we can see, lower high, a third lower high. Technically, we are on a downtrend. Now we now have a support turned resistance, that same confluence region. Okay, so now let me take it to the daily. So on the daily, we can now see that we have a support. All right, we have a support turned resistance, which is indicative also of a bearish movement. And the icing on the cake to the uh probability is this rejection candle yesterday. It's closed yesterday, hitting the resistance, hitting the trend line. It's just an indication of a reversal. So if we go to the 4 hour time frame, we have a rising wedge, and we are patiently waiting for the breakout downwards on NZD CHF. Don't forget RSI should be clearly below 50. And for this, I will also select MACD cross below zero. It adds, clarity to it. So it's a swing, but I can also pass for a intraday if you want it that way because it's close to the trend line. It can break out anytime also. So either as a day trader or swing, you can trade it based on your preference. All right, that's going to be all from my end this morning. I've analyzed about 6 pairs for us. I started with the USD CHF and I said I'm bearish on that on the 4 hour time frame. I'm bullish on GBP AUD on 1 hour. I'm bearish on the AUD CHF on 1 hour. I'm bearish on the NZD CHF on 4 hour. And I'm bearish on both the CAD CHF and the CAD JPY on 1 hour, especially for the news in the afternoon. Okay, so that'll be all from me. I'll just take 2 requests. I just have to go, but I'll take gold and GBP JPY and I'll be done. That's the requests I'm seeing now. Now, the dollar has not been stable. Gold has been in a range the whole of yesterday. Technically, my earlier outlook was gold hitting this resistance zone, forming a head and shoulder and dropping. But it retraced yesterday and is hanging around that trend line. So there's still a possibility of a bearish movement, though volatility is not assured for now. So it's just ranging around that trend line uh, where it retested the trend line. But then after a range, there is a possibility of a breakout. So I'll just mark this zone as a range. So if price breaks out downwards, you may sell. And if it breaks out upward, you may buy. No clarity aside that range we're seeing on gold. So that's my outlook for gold for today. And for GBP JPY, price just broke out slightly above the resistance on the weekly time frame. Okay, there's already a breakout above the resistance on the weekly time frame. That's a lot of strength on the GBP JPY. So the possibility now is that price, okay, it's trying to form a head and shoulder. If it forms a head and shoulder, if it completes this head and shoulder and breaks out below that resistance, it's going to sell. Otherwise, it may as well retest that resistance as a support to break out upwards. So the possibility around here is two. If it breaks out below the trend line, it will sell. If it retests the trend line and breaks out, okay, let me just put it in a clearer perspective here so that this is what JPY is doing now. So let's take it as a range. If it breaks out to the downside from here, it will sell. If it breaks out to the upside, it will buy. All right, that'll be all from my end this morning. Thank you for joining. Like I keep saying, don't forget next week, Tuesday, we're having our live trading for NFP. Plan to join us to trade live. That's the last NFP for the year 2025. Don't miss it. We'll see you again in the afternoon for another analysis session. Take care and have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.